Guys, in this video, we will see what custom hooks are and how to create and use them in React. So stay tuned till the end of the video. Before we go to Visual Studio Code and start coding, subscribe to the channel for more such videos. So guys, I'm here in my Visual Studio Code and I have set up a new React Y tab, which you can see here on the screen. So when we start a new React Y tab, we can see that we have this count button here. And as I click on the count, we can see that the count goes higher and higher. And if we look at this button here, so basically when we click on this button, it's using a set count function to set the count to count +1. And here on the top, we can see that the set count function is coming from inbuilt function in React, which we call React hooks. So useState is the most common type of React hook, which is basically inbuilt in React. So this React hook is basically giving us two things. One is count and set count. Count is just a variable and set count is a function that we use to change the value of this count. So whatever value I pass in this set count function is assigned to this count. And that's how this default React hook, that is useState, works. So I'll just go to this button and change this function here. So here I'm just going to say set my count to 2. And if I save this and refresh my app, now if I click on this button, it's just going to set the count to whatever value I'm passing to set count. But now what I want to do is I want to customize this React hook in a way that whatever value I pass to this function, it should do a square of this value and set the count to square of the value that I'm passing here. So if I pass 2, it should be setting the count to 4. And if I pass a value 3, it should be setting the count to 9. So as of now, it's just setting the count to 3. So whatever value I pass is assigned to the count. So now the question is, can we really customize this hook? Answer is no. We cannot customize any predefined hook in React, but we can create our own custom hooks. For example, in place of useState, I can create my own custom hook and I can say something like this, where I comment this line and I use my own custom hook, which I can call use square. But as of now, we don't have use square defined anywhere in the app. So we can see that the screen goes blank and we land into errors. To define this use square custom hook, I'll just go to my source folder and create a new folder here. This is going to be hooks. Under this, I'm just going to create a new file, which is going to be usesquare.js. And that's where I'm going to define my use square hook. And then I can import it here and this error will be gone. To define the use square custom hook, first we are going to import useState from React. And from this file, we are going to export const use square function, which is going to be just like a normal arrow function. And this function is going to accept an initial value. By default, this initial value is going to be 0. And inside this function, we can define a state, which is going to be value, set value. And this is just going to be using a use state as usual. And it's going to take an initial value. Let me minimize this so we can see it clearly. So here we just defined a use square function. And inside this, we have a one simple state defined here. And inside this function, we can create another function, which is going to be square value. And this function is going to receive this value state that we have defined here. And it's just going to set the value to square of the value, which is basically value into value. And this custom hook function, which is use square, is going to return two things. It's going to return a value and a square value function. So basically, we have defined a custom hook where we return a value and a function that takes a square of that value. So basically, that's how we can define any custom hooks. And now we can go to app.jsx. Here in app.jsx, I can import my use square. And now our application is back. And if we look at this line here, this time we are not using a use state to get the value of count and set count. We are using a use square function. And now let's see what happens if I click on this button. On this button, when I click on it, it's just setting the count to 3. But because we are using use square function this time, the count will be set to 9. Let's try it here. Now if I click on this, my count is set to 9 because it's using a use square function. Whatever value we are passing here is being passed on to use square function, which is basically receiving this value, and square value function is setting the value to whatever square of whatever value is being passed to it. And now if I try passing another value, let's say I pass 4 here and refresh my application. Now if I click on the count, I should be able to see 16, which is square of 4. So that's a very basic example of the custom hook. Basically, I have created my own version of the use state and I'm bringing these value and the function to change that value from the use square custom hook. Good thing with the custom hooks is that you can define as many functions as you want here. For example, as of now, I have defined only one function which takes a square of the value. What if I define a function which is going to take cube of the value? Basically, this function is going to return a value 3 times of the value. And I can pass this function again here and I can return cube value function here. And now I can go to my app.jsx. We already have set count. These are basically the variable names. We can name them as we want, but basically this set count represents square value function, and whatever function I define next here is going to represent cube value function, which is this. But I can name it it as I want. For example, I can name it as set cube. And now instead of using set count function, I'll be using my set cube function here. If I do that and pass a value of 2, and if I refresh my application, I should be able to see the value of 8 here when I click on this, because it's taking cubic value of 2, and that is something we have defined it here in cube value function. So basically in your custom hook, you can define as many functions as you want, and this is how our custom hook definition is looking like. So guys, that's all I wanted to cover in this video about custom hooks. If you have any queries on that, leave me in the comments, and if you found a value in this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.